The Koalition.
Hey everyone, I'm here with Mr. Torrence Davis. How you
Hello,
doing, Torrance?
I'm doing great.
Good, good. And we're here to talk about your upcoming book release, which I believe is called Rebel Without a Pause Button: How I Got into Video Game Journalism. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, roughly,
Oh,
it's Rebel Without a Pause button. How I became a video game journalist.
oh, okay. Cool. So, so tell us about the book and how it came about.
Oh yeah, great. So, as you know, I've been doing the Warzone for wow. It's you know what? It's almost 9 years that I've been doing the Warzone. Come to think of it, and on the show, I would occasionally, have these anecdotes of things that happened to me in the industry in the past or whatever. And I would do it so often that one day I decided to write an article on the Bitbag titled "How I Got into Video Game Journalism," Part One. I knew it was going to be a long write up, so I decided to do it in two parts. So I wanted to do the past and how I got into it, and then part two was like what's going on now. So I wrote the article, and then I eventually did part two. I actually love when you love your own work, that means something. So I love the article because it was the short synopsis of how I became a video game journalist, So, a few years later, more than a few actually, Amazon has these great tools and ebooks are the thing. And I had already taken a nightly blog I did when I was working IT at this place and turned it into a book just to see how easy it was to publish a book called Night Watch. And I said, you know what? I should take that article I wrote and expand it into several chapters and make a book out of it. Because I think that everything that I went through, even though it was before the internet really became big and, things have changed drastically since then, everything I went through, it would be a handy guide. Other people out there could buy the book and be like, oh, this is cool. I want to become a video game journalist. Maybe this is the route I need to take. So I did my chapters of how I got into the business. And at the end, not unlike Robert Rodriguez, I did a 10-minute video game journalism school. Robert Rodriguez, in his book, Rebel Without a Crew, did a 10-minute film school. I said, oh, I'll model it after that. And I did a 10-minute video game journalism school.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. I didn't know about the article before. So how much of that article retained its original form? Like, did you basically take the skeleton of it and then like kind of rewrite it? Like,
Yes. I,
do it
basic, I basically took the whole article and put it in the book and then took certain parts out of it and put those into their relevant chapters and then expanded on those small paragraphs. Because
oh,
like on the web it was I don't know what the equivalent of pages would be, but on
hmm
the web it was just you scroll down, you read all the words, a couple pictures, and it's done. So I had to take paragraphs. Like I may have had a paragraph on, when we first went to E3, and a paragraph with, the Playboy Mansion in it, and a paragraph with parties. I had to take all of those and turn each of those into expanded chapters.
right,
Like you've read the book, there's a chapter all about the bit bag and how the bit bag came to be, a chapter on video game time, a chapter on shut the fuck up and play. There's a chapter on the war zone, a chapter on my childhood, being a child and being in the video games, which is something that's not, it was touched upon in the article, but it was really expanded in the book about being a kid and loving video games and how it was a major part of my life and how I looked up to editors that were at other magazines and what they did, and how they were able to give out all this information about upcoming games. That's what I wanted to do.
yeah, those are some of the best parts of the book because, like, I was like a baby back then, and I was playing on like the first NES with my brother and stuff, but I had like no memories of like going to the arcade or anything. So hearing it from your perspective was great.
Yes.
But But yeah, I've read the book, of course, the Alpha.
Mm-hmm.
But for the people listening, would you say that the book is more of a memoir, or is it more instructional for
I
the people who might be interested in getting into video game journalism?
I think it's more of a memoir, but
Mhm.
in that memoir, you're able to pick out things like, oh, that was smart. I'll probably do something like that, or how would I take this and apply it to this day and age? Because back then he was using faxes and calling people on the phone. How would I apply that today? If I wanted to do what Torrence did, how would I use this skill or what he wrote about in this book and apply it to today's internet and social media, and how can I get in and make friends with PR, and how do I take that and use it today?
Oh, okay, that's good. That's good for, for the people who know you, because I know you have a huge following from
Right.
the Warzone podcast. So they'll probably be really interested in, hearing the more personal aspects of your life
Yes.
and how you got into it and stuff. So that's good.
Yep.
So I know we've spoke about this, but like, were you ever concerned about, kind of saying too much and possibly like offending people that you've worked with throughout, your career in video games journalism?
Oh no, not at all. I knew that when I planned to write this book, that I was going to write it the way I wanted to, and I wasn't concerned about anybody getting their feelings hurt, because it's not really about throwing people under the bus or telling dirty secrets. It's more about factual things that actually happened, what I went through, how I dealt with it. I mentioned some stuff about the staff and some miscommunications we had. All that's in there. It all happened. Everybody knows it. And I did my best to not make anybody look bad. So if anybody who worked with me reads it, they'll understand. Yeah, I remembered that. I remember when we had that conversation. I know what he's talking about, type of thing. But I'm not worried at all that anybody's going to be offended by it.
Cool. So how was the writing process, and how long did it take you to structure the book and everything?
Oh, so interesting. So once I broke down the article, what I did was I use this product called Scrivener. You ever heard of it?
Yeah, I also use that.
Isn't it badass?
Oh, it's amazing.
I love it. You
Like,
can do anything with it. You can do screenplays, books, anything. Like, I threw away Microsoft Word a long time ago, and I've been using Google Docs, but I wanted a dedicated word processor, and I found Scrivener, and I just said, here, take my money. So anyway, I used Scrivener, and I used all of its tools. So I was able to jot down what I wanted to name my chapters before I started writing. And I would like put the name of the chapter and a brief description, so I'd know, okay,
yeah.
this is what this is about. Like, you can't stop a gamer. You can't stop a gamer is how dedicated we were as young dudes, being gamers. We were dedicated, not dedicated in the sense like Riku-san, where he plays 140 hours in a game, but dedicated to the fact that we didn't have social media, we didn't have internet, we didn't have Tuesday game releases. It was, okay, it's been a while. We need to see if this new game's out. Let's take a shot in the dark and get on the bus and go to Toys R Us. We were dedicated, hunting new experiences. And a lot of times, we didn't even have, like, we didn't have video. The only way you could get video of a game is if they had a commercial. And a lot of stuff that came out didn't have commercials. There was no commercial for Mega Man, So you go to Software, etc., or something, and you see this box and you see Mega Man, and I'm like, that looks like a robot, and it's from Capcom. Let's look at the back of the box. You look at the back of the, yeah, let's get it, and you get it having no idea what you're going to go through, no idea what your experience is going to be. So that's how I would go through these chapters. Like, Can't Stop a Gamer. It was about our dedication as young gamers. So I broke down all these chapters. And as I wrote the chapter and completed it, I would put a, what do they call it? What's the line that goes in the middle of it? A strike through. I would strike through the chapter. Okay, that's done. I start working on the next one. And Scrivener, I don't know how you did it, but I also would put the chapter title. I'd create new text and put the chapter titles in Scrivener as I wrote them, so I was keeping track of it. So it was almost like I had a live outline as I was writing the book. So I thought about it, and I'm just like, okay, I need to break this down in a timeline that's somewhat sequential, going from the beginning to present day. That was my idea. So I planned it all in my head, and then I just started executing. And I think I started writing last fall. I think.
Okay.
I actually wanted to get this done I wanted to get it done by January. And I think I started writing at the end of fishing season last year. And you know how it is. It's probably even harder for you because you're writing fiction. But writer's block is a real thing. And even though I had
it's always at the back of your mind.
Yeah, yeah. And even though I had the whole book in my head, there were times where I sat down and I'm like, I don't feel like writing tonight. I want to watch anime or play a game or just veg. Or just surf the internet or get on Twitter. There were nights where I just didn't feel like writing. And then, you had times when real life got in the way. Stuff is happening. You don't have time to write because you got to go somewhere, or you got to cook. You're cooking a nice dinner, or you're going to the movies. Stuff gets in the way. And then I have those days where I'm full of creative energy, and I sit down and I just start writing. And I'm just like a madman. Oh, it's just flowing out of my head into my fingers and through the keyboard to the computer. So, all in all, I started last fall. I officially finished the edit last night. So, it's May 10th. That's a pretty long time. Was that 9 months? Wow. And then, you know what? I could have had the book if I wasn't working, I could have had this book done in like a month. If I just woke up every day and wrote, but it wasn't like that. Real life gets involved, so I couldn't do that. So I think it took about 9 months. And even though I'm done now, there's more I want to write. So I'm going to burn out another chapter and a half tomorrow.
Oh, wow. That's good to hear.
Yep. I'm going to edit that, and then it's done. Completed, done, in the can.
Awesome. So, so in terms of the actual formatting of the book, so how are you publishing this? Is it just going to be ebook, or will there be like a paperback option as well?
Well, now that Amazon has CreateSpace, I will have an actual hard copy of the book, a paperback. It's going to be
awesome.
6x9. When I publish it, I'm going to get a bunch of those sent to me. Give them away as prizes or whatever, promotional materials. I'm sure people on the Warzone would like, free copies, patrons, whatever. So I want to have some hard copies, something I could sign my name in, and just hand to people. So yeah, I'm doing that. And then Amazon's going to get the timed exclusive. And then I'm also going to publish it on Barnes & Noble because I guess they have a pretty good tools for publishing books. So I'm going to publish it on the Nook. And I might put it on the Apple bookstore too. I haven't decided if I wanted to do that yet.
Okay. So in terms of formatting and stuff, are you doing all your formatting in Scrivener, or are you using a separate tool or resource to format the ebook?
You know what's funny? A lot of times people say, even Scrivener users say, some of the formatting they actually do it in Microsoft Word, which makes me sick. I did all my formatting in Scrivener. It's a very basic format. Basic font, basic spacing. I have 8 leading spaces at the beginning of each chapter. Bold font for chapter titles. It's really simple. Nothing special. I'm not putting any squiggly lines in there or anything fancy. It's just a straightforward. You've seen it. You saw basically what the book's going to look like.
Yeah, it's straightforward. It's exactly what you need it to be, pretty much. So.
Yeah. I wanted it to be an easy read. I want people to pick it up. I want it to be a really easy read. I almost published it with a single space. I mean, a double space, because I thought, as I was editing it, I edited it in double space mode, and I wrote it in double space mode, and I thought it was much easier to read that way. But sticking to standards, I just did single space. And sometimes when you output a Kindle book, Kindle will format it however it wants, and then the user can change it to their likeness.
Yeah.
So I just left it very basic. The only crazy thing you'll see in it is photos. I am going to have photos in there because I have a lot of old photos I want to put in there, and that's it. Very simple.
Cool. So, how was the editing process? Because I know this can be very stressful when writing a book. The editing part of it, like you'll usually have to go back and make a ton of changes and stuff. So, how did you handle your editing?
Well, I'm lucky enough to have a girlfriend who's a medical transcriber,
Awesome.
and she does medical transcription, but she also does editing. Of these medical documents. So I said, you know what, you should edit the book. So it gave her the opportunity to read the book and edit it. And she took that pen. Oh man, she went. I told her, I said, the editing process is great because I actually learned stuff from her editing. Like, for many years, I was saying case and point, and it's actually case in point. Things like that. I didn't know that when you had quotes, when you had a quoted statement that had like a question mark or whatever at the end of it, you put that outside the quotes if it's the end of the sentence. So there's all these things I was learning. And the funny thing is, I was like, is that, I'd read, I'd see it, and I was like, is that right? And then I would go check it. I'm like, oh, wow, that is right. So she edited the whole book for me. And I printed it out. So she had hard copy, and she went through it with the pen, and I took the stack of sheets and went through it one by one and edited it. And it was a very hard process going through reading it. I'm like, wait, where's that? I had to use the search tool a lot to find stuff because I couldn't just find it by looking at the screen. And I'd make those changes, and I went through the whole thing and edited the last 10 pages last night. And I'll have her edit the new chapter too, but that should be pretty fast. But editing it's tough. It's hard going through that process. I'm just glad I didn't have to edit it myself.
Yeah.
I'm sure I would have missed a lot. So yeah, she did a really, really good job. I know you have these big novels. I'm like, oh my God, what did he go through editing that book? As I was doing it, I was like, what did Gary go through?
Yeah, it's tough. That like editing is what really humbles a writer. Like, and like you said, you learn a lot about writing and the mechanics of it and stuff. So
now, when you wrote your book, did you just write or did you edit as you wrote?
I edit as I wrote, but I learned quickly that you shouldn't do that. Like, when you're first writing the book, you just need to write and just not even think about editing at all. Like, you just keep writing to get it out, because the faster you get it out, then it's there, and then you can edit it anytime.
You know where I actually learned that?
Where's that?
Finding Forrester.
Finding Forrester?
You never saw Finding Forrester?
Oh, no.
Sean Connery?
No, it sounds familiar.
Make that a high priority. It's about writing.
Okay.
And he was talking to this high school kid who was this excellent writer. He says, don't think, just write. Just write. Just start writing, just write. And I said, oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Because when you just write, because if you have to stop and edit, it stops your flow. It kills your mojo.
Yep.
So
indeed.
that's where I first learned that. And then I've come to find out that that's the way you should write. You should just type and forget about everything, zone out, and just keep typing. Worry about editing later. And, most publishing houses have editors anyway. So,
yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so you mentioned you've added additional chapters. I haven't read the additional stuff yet,
Right.
but how many new chapters have you added since the alpha?
So I've expanded existing chapters, and I'm adding one more chapter.
All right, and what's can you mention specifically like what you've added kind of?
I forgot to write a chapter on the Consumer Electronics Show, because before there was E3, there was a Consumer Electronics Show. It was pretty much the foundation of how we would attack E3 when E3 eventually started. We were going to Consumer Electronics Show for video games, you know? And I'm like, I think I need to write about that. I think that's important, because that's how we got started, is we would get press credentials before we even had a magazine. Like, we had the magazine, but we didn't have the magazine. Like, before we published our first issue, we were at Consumer Electronics Show getting stories for our first issue. And I think it's important that we write about the Consumer Electronics Show and how important the Consumer Electronics Show was back then when there was no E3. You had a winter Consumer Electronics Show and you had a summer Consumer Electronics Show. One was in Chicago, one was in Vegas, and we've been to both of them. And I think it was the very last show in Chicago, when they canceled the Chicago show, all the game companies were talking, well, you know, E3's coming up. And we're like, what? What's E3? All the publishers were talking, yeah, well, everybody's getting ready for E3. I'm like, what the hell is this E3? We heard it the whole time. I'm like, what is it? So I started digging, and I'm like, Electronics Entertainment Expo? It's a convention just for video games? Oh, we got to get in that. So, you know, I found the right information, made some phone calls, got some press credentials. Remember, there was no internet back then.
Yeah.
It was all
And
Prodigy.
What year was this?
This was 1994.
94. Wow.
Because the first E3 was in 95.
Okay.
And this actually may have been it was either at the last Chicago show or the last Vegas show, because the Vegas show was in January, which is considered winter. And I think the Chicago show was in August. I can't even remember. But yeah, so I looked into it. I found out how to get credentials. And I think the internet was just getting out there. I mean, it was out there, but not everybody knew. You could not go knock on a door and ask them if they knew the internet. They wouldn't know what the fuck you were talking about. And I somehow got a press credential form and got my whole crew into E3, the very first E3. There was
Nice.
5 or 6 of us. And it was the most amazing
It was
thing.
that easy today.
Yeah, it's not easy at all. Yeah, but see, the thing is, it wasn't easy back then either. Like I wrote in the book, at one point I sent a manila envelope with forms and copies of driver's licenses and letterhead. It was a huge stack of papers I had to send them to get people, you know, qualified for the show. And after that, I told them, I said, okay, from now on, if you want to go to E3, you handle your own press credentials. I'm not doing it anymore, because I got tired of it. It was too much work. So, yeah. So I want to talk about that. I also want to talk about, I wanted to expand our first E3 experience too. So I'm going to expand that some more. And I'm hoping that when I do this and I'm finished, I don't wake up and be like, oh yeah, I should write about that. Because that's how it happens, man. I'm going to be publishing abridged versions of my book, because I'm going to keep thinking of things to write. So I want to get it all out. And I want it to be something that anybody could pick up and be like, yes, this is what I've been waiting for. Because I do believe, even though anybody can start a WordPress site and talk about video games, I think people want to know how to get in the inside.
Yeah.
And then once they get in the inside, okay, once you're in the inside, how do you work it? How do you request review copies? How do you get to events? You know, what do you got to do? So I'm hoping lots of people grab. I'm hoping people grab it. Just be like, yeah, I've done this already. Let's see how it was for Torrence. You know.
Yeah, no, I think you know, no matter what stage you're at, there's probably going to be a lot to learn from this book. Like, because I mean, you got people who, you know, might not have even been alive at when the first E3 came around,
Right.
and they're YouTubers now and stuff, and like it will be good for them to understand the foundations of how the industry grew and stuff.
Right.
So I think there'll be lots to learn for everyone
Yep.
in the book. Um, but yeah, do you see yourself like maybe writing more books like this in the future, or
Oh,
like are you?
definitely. Yeah, I actually enjoy it. So the funny thing is, I'm a creative. I mean, you're a creative. You understand how it is. I do
Mhm.
photography. I do filmmaking. I like to write. And the thing is, when you write, it doesn't cost anything. You sit down and you just start typing. I love doing it. It's great. I've actually been doing it since I was a kid. I remember writing my me and my cousin's experience in Fort Lauderdale. I actually took a yellow notepad and I was handwriting it. I love, and I'm a big, huge nonfiction guy. I love reference manuals. I love technical manuals. I love stuff like this. Like I could
Mhm.
pick up Robert Rodriguez's Rebel Without a Crew and I could read that in a day. Give me a novel though, I'll never finish it unless I read it on the toilet. And I
Yeah.
love, the thing that's crazy is I love comic books and I love movies, but I have so much trouble reading novels. I have the Lord of the Rings. I can't even get through I can't even finish the Shire. Because for me
Yeah.
to sit down and actually read a book, it means I have nothing else to do. And I feel that if I read nonfiction, like reference manuals and how to's and stuff like that, I'm learning something as I'm reading. Whereas if it's a novel, I'm not really learning anything. I'm just reading the story and enjoying the story. And
Yeah.
I could do that in 2 hours if I watch a movie. I can tell you on one hand how many books I've actually read from beginning to end in my entire life. I've read The Color Purple. I read
We're just talking fiction.
that's fiction. Yeah,
Uh,
just talking fiction. I can't even tell you how many reference I have. So many reference manuals and books on HTML and stuff like that. I could read those all day. I don't know
Yeah.
what it is because I look at a lot of like filmmakers, and filmmakers love to read novels. They read them like it's air. They just consume it, and I'm like, I can't do that. I can't sit down and read a story. But I could read comic books, even though I don't read comic books as much as I used to. I could read comic books because I'm a visual thinker anyway. So it's fun to read comic books and look at the visual side and read the dialogue at the same time.
Yeah.
But I don't. I've never been able to. I was kind of envious of people who could like go to book clubs and read a book a week and stuff like that because I just can't do it. I don't have like ADD or anything, but I just can't. I can't do it. There was this one book I read called Run. I think it was called Run. That was really good. I read the whole book sitting on the toilet. So
Is it
I literally,
short book?
no, I mean, I think it was a couple hundred pages. I was
Okay.
like, okay, I'm going to buy a book because I said I was forcing myself to be one of those guys that reads novels. So I bought the book because it looked interesting. It was an action book, and with some gangster stuff in it. So I said, okay. So I'd sit on the toilet, I'd read. When I was done sitting on the toilet, I'd mark my page, and I wouldn't come back to the book again until I needed to sit on the toilet. I couldn't sit in bed and read it. I couldn't be at a
Mhm.
cafe and read it because if I'm at a cafe, I'm eating. If I'm in my man cave, I'm doing something on my computer or playing games or doing something creative. I can't read the book. So, like when you're on the toilet, you're only doing one thing, and your hands are free. So that's where I started reading it. And the only reason I read Color Purple was because of a project for school, and it was a good book and a great movie.
Okay.
But I
So
just
really, I mean, so you don't have a problem with fiction. It's just like
no,
you can only really consume it when you have nothing else to do at that moment.
exactly.
So yeah, so yeah, I understand that. I
It's
can
tough.
understand that. Yeah. So you mentioned that one book that you read that kind of inspired you to write this book, but In the process of writing this book, did you consult any other books, or maybe any other video game based books out there?
No, actually, I didn't. No, I could say
Okay.
that I was inspired. Have you ever heard of Rebel Without a Crew by Robert Rodriguez?
No, I haven't.
He goes through his entire process of how he became a filmmaker in Hollywood. So he started off
Okay.
with how he got equipment and actors, how he made his first movie was like the first part of the book. And the second
Hmm.
part was how he took that movie and he shopped the movie to Hollywood to get a deal. And I said, that's the stuff I want to read. So I blitzed through that. And then at the very end, he has a 10-minute film school. Like, if you ever watch any of his DVDs or Blu-rays, he puts the 10 minutes film school on. He actually does a visual version of it, like
Hmm.
Desperado and stuff like that. So he has a
Yeah.
10-minute film school, like little tips and tricks he used when he was filming the movie. Like at one point, he had guns that didn't have they weren't real guns; they were rubber, and I didn't realize this. And they just used special effects to do the gunshots later. Little things like that. So that was a huge inspiration for this book. Obviously, you could tell in the name too. But other than that, I can't think of anything else that inspired me. Um, Anthony Frazier's book, kinda. Anthony Frazier's book came at an odd time because I had already started my book when his book came out. So I decided to grab his book because it was the nonfiction. You know,
Yeah.
here's how I did things when I started off as a kid. Here I am now, and I thought it was really interesting. And as I'm reading his book, it kind of inspired me because here's Anthony Frazier who's like hustling big time. He's doing his thing out there,
Oh yeah.
and I've known him since him, and Hip Hop Gamer were talking on the PlayStation camera years ago, and he went from gamer to podcaster to website editor, and now he did a TED talk, and he was on, what was it, CNN? Was it? He's done all
Yeah.
this stuff,
CNN.
and then here's his book, Don't Dumb Down Your Greatness. And it was twofold because it's Anthony. We all know Anthony, but at the same time, it's like, wow, this book makes sense. I'm reading it. I'm like, oh, I get the message he's trying to say here, because there's a lot of people out there who have talent, but they don't exploit their own talent, or people who don't think they have talent. You know, everybody
Yeah.
has, everybody has greatness. Don't dumb it down. You know. So I was reading this and I'm like, wow, this is really interesting because I'm in the middle of writing this book. So as I'm writing my book and reading his book, I'm getting inspired by his book, which is really interesting. But other than that, I think a major part of it was talking about stuff on the war zone every week. And there were people that didn't listen to that show or they forgot about it. So sometimes I'd repeat things that I'd said in the past. I'm like, it'd be cool if all this stuff was in a book, so
Yeah,
people could
because
sit down and
because
read
you
it.
get a lot of new listeners as well, so like they can go back and kind of check
Yes,
your background as well. So
yes, exactly.
yeah. So you also mentioned that you used to write down your experiences in that yellow notebook and stuff.
Yes,
So one of the things I was gonna ask, like, was it easy for you to recall all of these memories, or like did you have to kind of maybe talk to some people to remember certain things, or maybe like look at some of your old journals or things that you've written before and stuff like
nope,
that,
not at all.
or all in your
All
head?
Everything that I wrote in that book had a very profound effect on my life because as some of that stuff, like for instance, me begging my mom to get me a copy of Miss Pac-Man the whole entire day. I'll never forget it. This is how much I was into games. Miss Pac-Man came out. I had to have Miss Pac-Man at home because I love the arcade game. And I didn't have a job, so I didn't have enough quarters to play when I wanted to play it. I needed this at home all day. Mom, you get Miss Pac-Man? Can we get Miss Pac-Man? Are you going to get it for me? Can you get me? We go out, we go to the museum, we spend the day with my cousins, come back home. You gonna get Miss Pac-Man? Can you get it for me, Mom? Can you get it? I mean, all day long. I must have been the most annoying kid on the planet. And she actually got it. And I was so happy. That had a huge effect on me. I'll never forget it. My dad taking me to MIT. When MIT had this arcade, it was all pinball machines. I mean, before the video games, I walked in an arcade that was pinball machines. I'd go crazy. I was like, oh my God, look at all these pinball machines. You know, all this stuff that had effects on me. I wouldn't say it's scarring, but these they put stamps, life stamps in me. These are things I'll never, ever forget. You know, because it was just great stuff. It was good things. I was happy about all this stuff. So I can't forget it. And that's why it was so easy for me to just write it in a book. I didn't need any references whatsoever. Everything. But what was interesting is, and it's awesome at the same time, the fact that they have the Wayback Machine, the Internet Archive, and I was able to pull some posts from my old Video Game Time web pages and put them in the book. That was awesome. So in a sense, yeah, I did use some old notes and old stuff that I had because I found some old websites and old editorials that I wrote. And I put those in the book. Those editorials that you see and all that stuff from Video Game Time that you see in that book, all those editorials I posted in there, none of that stuff is written down anywhere but the internet, and it's on the Wayback Machine. So
Thank God for the Wayback Machine.
Yeah. I mean, I was reading some of those editorials. I was like, wow, look what we were writing back then. We really knew what we were talking about. You know, because we were talking about stuff that might happen in the future, and it happened. We were talking about the whole Sega, Sony thing that was going on, and just, oh, wow, I'm reading that stuff, and I'm like, man, we were just like, we were on point. And we didn't even know it back then. We were too stupid. You know, we're just like, whatever. Here it is. This is a new editorial. What's next?
Yeah, it's pretty awesome because the thing that's great about memoirs is like, because people have a lot of great memories, but like they never share them. So,
Right.
you know, it's cool to have that option to do that, and it's cool that you've done this. So final question I have is, you know, do you have a release date in mind at the moment?
Yep. I have a release window.
Okay.
Which is
And
next
what's
week.
that?
Next week.
Next week.
I actually, when we're done with this interview, I'm actually going to take some photos for the cover. And I'll have the other chapter done by tomorrow. And we'll edit that. And once all that's clean, I'm putting all my images into the book, tightening up any formatting I need to do. And I'm going to press. And I'll do a big announcement next week, and I'm going to market the shit out of this book. Have you ever used paid marketing to sell your books?
Well, not to sell my books, but I have used paid marketing.
Yeah,
So,
paid advertising like on Twitter and Google and stuff like that.
Yeah, Facebook.
It actually works.
Yeah, there's some good targeting tools to like
Yes.
target the type of people that will pick up your book and stuff.
Yep.
So.
Exactly. How are your books doing?
Well, I mean, I don't really promote them, but I am doing like a final, just kind of like, you know, just touching it up and making it perfect kind of thing. And then I may change the covers as well. And then like once I've done that, I might promote them a little bit. But ultimately, I kind of want to move on to a new project.
Oh, okay.
So yeah.
Cool. Another book.
That's my plan. Yeah, another book.
All right. Cool. Keep it going, man.
Thanks. You too, man.
Gary Swabery, the author.
Trying
Sounds good.
to get on your level.
Shoot, I'm trying to get on your level, man. You already got 2 books published.
Oh, well, so have you technically.
Technically, yes. Technically, yes.
Yeah. Also, you mentioned the cover. So, like, what do you have a vision in mind for the cover already?
Yes, I do.
Like, are you designing it, or are you
I'm
getting
doing
a
it.
designer for it?
I went on what you call it? I went on DeviantArt to try to find somebody to do a cover for me.
All right.
And I had a lot of people send me their artwork because I originally envisioned the cover should look like an Atari 2600 cartridge box.
Wow, that would be awesome.
Now, if you remember the old Capcom games, the old Nintendo games and the old Atari 2600 games, all their covers were hand painted. It was hand painted artwork that looked nothing like the game. And I'm like, wouldn't it be cool if I designed the entire book to look like an Atari game? And in it, I would have images of things that I've had in my life, like controllers, maybe a picture of me, maybe Miss Pac-Man and all this stuff. So I had this idea for a cover. But I thought about it and I'm like, I don't know if that would be a good cover. I need a cover that's going to draw people in. And I just decided, you know what? I'm a photographer. I'll shoot the cover myself. And like Rebel Without a Pause Button, it means two things. It goes back to my early days of video gaming because, as you know, when I started playing on the Atari 2600, the Atari 2600 controller does not have a pause button. So it references how far back my gaming goes. And the other thing it means is I've never stopped. If you think about it, from the first day that I picked up a controller, I've never stopped gaming. I've never stopped going. And as much as I've pretty much retired from this industry, I'm still doing it. I don't consider myself in the industry anymore, but I still do it because of passion. So I'm never going to stop. You know, my cousin always says he's going to be gaming until he's gone. So when I say Rebel Without a Pause Button, that's what I mean. I was like, oh, that just works in so many ways. I love it.
That's awesome.
Because originally it was just going to be how I got into video game journalism. I'm like, I need something with some punch.
Yeah.
And I thought of Robert Rodriguez and how he used Rebel Without a Cause. Because you know about Rebel Without a Cause, right? The old movie.
I actually don't. I'm not a huge movie person.
Oh, it's the title of an old movie. It's like Rebel Without a Cause. And, you know, Public Enemy came out with a song, Rebel Without a Pause.
Yeah.
There was a play on that title. Robert Rodriguez's book was Rebel Without a Crew. I said, okay, I'll do Rebel Without a Pause Button. It's video games, you know? Yeah. So what you see on the cover will reference that, and you'll understand when you see it.
Okay. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm really excited about it. It's just like, you know, being a creative, I don't know if you think about this like I think about it, but I feel that if you're going to be on this planet 80-something years or whatever, however long we live, make a mark. Do something. You know? We got this brain. We got tools. Leave something behind. Leave a legacy behind. Do something. Don't just go to work, come home, and die. Do something creative. I don't know. I think it's important that you do that, you know, especially if you're a creative person. You're creative for a reason. Creative people are made to put things here for other people to read, listen to, other people to enjoy. That's what we do. That's why we're here. That's why we're creative. I don't know why I'm creative. I just am. You're creative. Have you ever sat down and thought, why am I a creative person? You just are.
Oh, yeah.
And we're compelled by the whole notion of creating something and releasing it to the public to consume. That's why I do the War Zone. That's why I've done websites. That's why I do film. That's why I write. I love to do that. And I love hearing people's reactions, you know? So I'm really interested in it. I'm happy. I'm on top of the world right now. I couldn't be happier. So.
Awesome. Well said.
Yeah.
So, that's the interview. So look out for the book next week. At the time of recording, it's the 10th of May. So hopefully we may get it around the 17th or 18th, do you think?
Yeah, most definitely.
Okay. That's good. So look out for that, people. Go check it out. Once it's out, I will update this with all the links you need to go buy the book. So definitely go do that.
All right.
Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
No problem.
I'll have my studio get in touch with yours.